1037 The River, Richmond's best alternative, on the phone with me right now. Actor, writer, director, genius, Kevin Smith. Thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, look, I'm not going to come on if you call me a genius. How dare you? That kind of word you got to hold for people like Quentin Tarantino, man.
No, you are definitely in that category, and I'm guessing you're on the West Coast right now, right?
I am, Los Angeles this morning.
So, I mean, how much weed did you have to smoke to get up at 6 a.m. and do these interviews?
I took care of my business last night, so what I did is I went to bed at 12:30, and I smoked a massive joint at that point. So when I got up this morning, I still had, the nice lingering effects without having to wake up early just to smoke to talk. But I don't do it like that. I don't run it like a regiment where it's like, I got to do this in order to do this. I treat weed like my friend, man. I don't presume on that relationship, so I don't make appointments. I kind of get with my friend when I can, but the point is I get with my friend as often as I can from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. When I picked up weed back in when I was 38 years old, I'm 42 now, it was because I'd never really done it prior. I was even though I made stoner movies, I wasn't really a stoner. You could count on like maybe two hands the amount of times I'd smoked weed. And I'd always had a bad notion of quote unquote drugs based on Jason Mewes, my J to my Silent Bob, having problems with OxyContin and heroin, but he never had a problem with weed. He kind of skipped weed real quickly. So when I kind of embraced it, it was because I worked with Seth Rogen, and here was a guy who was a stoner, but he was so accomplished and could get so many things done. He was alert. He wasn't like zombified or vegged out in front of a couch. That was the first time I met this generation of productive stoners that so many of them working in this business. It's crazy, man. And I was like, all the stereotype I had against weed from the Just Say No era or something like that, yeah. I put it in the same category as heroin or cocaine or something like that. So I was like, Seth's a smart guy, man, and productive, and also, like, I don't think he'd fall for dopey traps. And so suddenly I started looking at weed through a different prism, and I smoked up with Seth on Zack and Miri. We were done shooting the movie, but he was leaving the next day. We'd wrapped and stuff, and my friend Malcolm had always said, like, hey, man, Seth Rogen wants to smoke up with you. And I was like, I don't do that. And he goes, he doesn't know that, man. He thinks because of Jay and Silent Bob, you're king of the stoners. And you got to smoke with Seth Rogen. That's a stoner icon meeting a stoner icon. I was like, but I'm not really a stoner icon. He's like, well, those dopey characters of yours are. So at the end of the movie, I said to Seth, I was like, hey, man, maybe now that we're done, we could go to the editing room, watch some outtakes and stuff, and smoke some of that weed I hear so much about. And he was like, finally. So that night we got together, and I hadn't really smoked in a long, long time. And I just liked the experience. It doesn't make you crazy. It doesn't put you in a different place. It doesn't make you any more creative or wacky. What it does is it just lowers inhibition, creative inhibition for me. So suddenly ideas that you might have had that you let go of because you're like, I'm not good enough, nobody's going to like that, that's a stupid idea. Instead, you wind up pursuing them a little more, man. Like, so I've started, like, I always dreamed about doing what you do. I love theater of the mind. I love radio. And then because of weed, I was like, you know what, man, I'm going to start doing as many radio shows as I want. Nobody's stopping me, and who cares what the perception is? If somebody's like, all he does is talk on podcasts now, great, that's all I want to do. So it's great for, like, losing the inhibitions. It won't make you any smarter. It won't make you any more creative or anything like that. Don't get deluded about it. But what it will do is that little voice in your head where you're like, hey, I want to try this thing. There's another voice immediately comes on top of it, goes, why you? You'll never be able to do that, man. Oh, there's someone else has done it. You're out of your mind and stuff. Weed just suffocates the secondary voice. It smokes that person out. With the point where you're like, all right, man, let's give it a shot. Something cool could happen. It makes you a little more kind of, less inhibited. That's the only way I can explain it.
Yeah. Now, you talk about weed, you talk about your podcast. I listen to pretty much all the ones on the Smodco channel. And Hollywood Babylon, I think just recently they said that it was like your first show that you weren't smoking weed. Like you smoked weed every single other show.
There was one a couple weeks back where I was coming from something. I didn't get a chance to go home and grab a smoke, so wound up doing the show smoke-free. And I thought about it right before I went on stage. I was like, man, since the inception of this show, I've always smoked right before we went, so this will be the first time I did it without weed. And it was a funny, different dynamic for the show. Like, but I still prefer to kind of go up baked because then it's also fun for me. And, I can keep it together. It's not like I get up there and people are like, oh, man, it's a shame he's baked. We can't enjoy the show. It actually kind of makes the show a little bit better.
Yeah, I went to your comic book store for the first time last weekend, actually, up in Red Bank, New Jersey.
Get out of here, man.
Yeah.
Was Walter there?
Mike was there when I went.
Mike was there.
Yeah. I mean, it was It's so cool. I didn't expect there would be so many like props and costumes from all your movies and stuff, and I think that's really cool that you do that.
Yeah, that was the idea. Like when we opened the store in '97, right? And so that was still in the era. It was kind of coming to an end, but the era of Planet Hollywood. Like when they opened those Planet Hollywoods, like that really captured my imagination because you could go and eat and look at a bunch of props from the movies and stuff. So, I had a few things inducted into the Planet Hollywood, Holdings Museum, whatever they call it, the collection.
Yeah, sure.
One was the toy truck from Mallrats that Silent Bob steps on, and the other was the NC-17 certificate that we got for Clerks or something. So, it was cool. It was cool to be like, you figured my Lord, my stuff's going into a sort of museum, even though it was a restaurant. So when we had a chance to open the comic book store, because of that, because I grew up going like, wow, Planet Hollywood, and you could see the props, I said, hey, man, we could do our own version of that where we have nothing but props in space, so we might as well put up some of the stuff from the movies. And it's cool. If you go into the store, it's in Red Bank, New Jersey, and folks have seen it on Comic Book Men if you watch AMC. If you go into the store, it is not just a comic book store. It is kind of like going to a little View Askew mini movie museum with costumes on display and props that we use. So I try to make it fun for the audience the way that I would like it be fun for me if I was a fan of somebody who had a comic book store and also made movies. That's how I kind of go about everything in life. I'm like, okay, if I was a fan of this, what would I want? What would I want to see? What would I want access to? And I've always been more of a fan, or had the fan mentality more so than a creator. I'm just a fan that got very lucky and got an opportunity to do some creating.
Yeah, I wish I could talk to you more, but this is all they're giving me for time. But just so everyone knows, Tough Shit is in stores now. Go pick that up. Comic Book Man returns February 14th on AMC, and hopefully Clerks 3 sometime in the distant future, or near distant future, I guess.
I got to convince Jeff Anderson if that's the case, man. 2014, that'll be the 20th anniversary. Oh, I can't wait.
We're hoping for it, man. Thanks so much for coming on, Kevin.
Excellent talking to you. Thanks.
Thank you.